I am told that I am on. I hear the music. What am I actually on? Oh, I'm on now. I'm sorry. I heard the music, so I assumed that meant that I was not on, that the music was on. Okay, welcome to Healthcare Triage Live. Such a professional show. We're starting off 2016 with a bang. We're so happy you're here. Thank you for joining us. We missed you the last few weeks. We hoped you've watched some of the great episodes at the end of last year. If not, you should go back and see them. My questions episode with John was excellent. Then we did one with biologics versus biosimilars that was somewhat wonky, but awesome, and you should go watch it. And now we're back, 2016, brand new episodes. Let's do this. Thank you as always for your support on patreon.com. We are always humbled and amazed that people want to support the show. We wish there were more of you, however, but we're so thankful for everybody that does. You can also check out our Facebook page, facebook.com/healthcaretriage. I just clicked on the wrong thing and there's a picture of a gif of Harry Styles going crazy here, so I'm now distracted. Anyway, reddit.com/r/hctriage is our healthcare triage Reddit site, and I am Stream of Consciousness, so let's get started. Potion Masters 007 asks, irritable bowel syndrome, hereditary? My mother, grandmother, and myself all have it at varying degrees. Mom is worse, diarrhea after eating anything. Okay. These are always complicated questions that are very difficult to answer because you share more than one thing with your family. You share genetics with your family, which is, I think, what you really want to know. But you also share behavioral, parenting, lifestyles, how you grew up make up. It is likely your socioeconomic class is similar. It is likely that your sort of upbringing was similar. It is likely that the levels of anxiety or depression or other things that could happen would be similar. And therefore, it is difficult to tease out specifically what's the hereditary component and what's the sort of behavioral component that would also be associated with families. It is clear that irritable bowel syndrome runs in families. And it is because it is clear, like you said, that when people have it in one family, other people get it too. But irritable bowel syndrome is also a sort of wide diagnosis that captures a bunch of symptoms that are unfortunately not yet linked to genotype the way that we think that we would like to see with phenotype. So does it run in families? Yeah. Am I sure that there's a genetic component? I don't know if that's as clear. And unfortunately, that answer is probably not going to help you, or maybe it will help you, because at least just let it go, and don't worry so much about whether it's the gene that's causing it, and just recognize that it does run in families, and therefore we should be watching out for it, and we should try to do whatever we can to make it better. Embarrassed, so made fake account. Why? You should ask your questions. And you asked, I think, even more than one. So you should make a real account. But your first question is, I left some food in my fridge too long and it got moldy. My mom says bleach it for 15 minutes, then put it in the dishwasher. Is that okay, or should I do something different? Now, the first time I read that question, I assumed you meant food, and I got really panicked because I don't know why you were bleaching your food or even putting it in the dishwasher. But then we saw that you fixed it and other stuff, and you really meant the container. And so what you're asking is, if the food in the container gets moldy, your mom says bleach it for 15 minutes and then put it in the dishwasher. Is that okay? That's overkill. Like, your mom's way too worried. First of all, remember that some stuff like bread mold is what they make penicillin out of. It's not going to kill you. And also, it's possible that you've even eaten food that has some amount of mold on it and never even knew, because it just hadn't grown to the point where you could see it. You should take the food out and you should wash it with soap and water or put it in the dishwasher, and then it is clean again. I wouldn't be any more panicked about the mold growing on food going in there than I would in general about food that's been longer than would be otherwise healthy. Because you worry about bacteria, you worry about viruses, you worry about funguses, and you worry about all that stuff. That's why we wash our stuff. But the idea that you got to bleach it in for 15 minutes and then run it through that's probably more than you need to do. Plus, you don't want bleach almost anywhere near what you're eating. It is not to be ingested. So I wouldn't use the bleach at all. I think that good soap and water, good dishwasher, more than enough. Your second embarrassed so made fake account questioner, what are your thoughts on Trump's letter of health from his doctor? I hope everybody goes and reads it. First of all, forgetting all politics, because I'm going to take that entirely, Donald Trump loves to hire people who know how to use like the most superlative language that can be imagined. This letter, I wish I brought it up even to read it here, but it was like, it basically said, he's the healthiest man who's ever run for president, ever. His health is not to be believed. It is spectacular. It is so over the top. But it's basically exactly what Donald Trump's campaign spokesman would say. It's what his lawyer would say. It's what everyone around Trump would say. It's all Trump-tacular. And his health is so far over the top. So I thought that the letter of health from his doctor was just entertaining, and gave almost no specifics about his health other than to claim that he's the healthiest man that's ever run for president in the history of the United States. And so what more do you say after that? It's just, it's incredible. Michelle in Winfield 1. What are your thoughts on the latest Dr. Ioannidis paper stating the exaggeration of many statements or the impossibility of repeating the experiments in many studies that are published? John Ioannidis, who I think we've mentioned on Healthcare Triage before, is a one-man juggernaut of proving that research is crap. And he's done a spectacular job of it. I think he wrote that paper that I've cited more than one time that shows that if you go through a cookbook, everything has been shown to both cause and cure cancer. He is one of the leader in sort of the whole reproducibility movement, and basically talking about the fact that much research, a lot of epidemiologic research can't be reproduced when we do prospective studies. He's even shown that a lot of randomized controlled trials are flawed and can't be reproduced. So I think a lot of stuff he does is great. I'm a big fan. And in fact, when reporters call me and they want to talk about these issues and they say, who else should I talk for? He's on my talk to about this. He's on my short list of you have talked to John Ioannidis, right? Because he is one of the leading experts in this area. So again, big fan. I think that he has been out there for a while in sort of pushing the idea that research needs to be more reproducible. We're going to be doing a whole healthcare triage series on that in the future. We got a grant from the NIH. I don't even think I've ever talked about that, but we've gotten a grant from the NIH to create sort of modules and educational curricula about how to do more reproducible research. I am sure I will be bringing up many of these topics, and probably his name, many times as we do that type of work, because it's very important. And now to something completely different. Anthony Evans asks, what's my spaghetti policy? I'm not against it. I don't know. Détente. I'm not going to advocate for spaghetti, but pasta's delicious. But I'm trying not to eat too many carbs. And I try not to eat too much pasta these days. But, in an Italian restaurant at Mama Carola's, I will have some pasta when it comes on the side. That's because I like it. I don't even know what you're asking about. Mark brought up, maybe you're asking about the amount of sauce. I don't know. The right amount? I don't even know what to answer this. I'm not anti-spaghetti, but I certainly wouldn't say I'm pro-spaghetti either. Or are you asking about spaghetti versus other pastas? Because, angel hair can be nice sometimes. And then sometimes you want some fettuccine or like the round. I don't know. Eric L., as a pediatrician and a parent, do you have any suggestions for soon-to-be parents about what to ask prospective docs during a pre-birth interview? We were coming up with a list of questions. Stan was actually asking, does this actually happen? And yes, parents, or especially first-time parents, will often go and meet doctors while mom is still pregnant in order to interview doctors to see if they like them before they start having them take care of their children. So it's sort of like a feel it out. Do you like the doctor? Do I want this doctor to be the doctor of my child potentially for the next 18 years? And then even other children as they're born. And in an ideal world, you do this early so that doctor can even go see your baby in the hospital, establish rapport and a relationship right off the bat when the baby's born. So you're asking me, are there questions that I would recommend that parents ask? I think a lot of it is just sort of like certainly one thing you want to know is how often will your doctor be in the office? Because some people feel very particular that they always want to see their doctor and not the doctor's partners. And if the doctor you're seeing is only there 1 or 2 days a week because they're working part-time, that can make it harder for them to know that you're going to get to see that doctor when your kid is sick. If you care about that, that's important. You may also ask, obviously you might be interested in sort of what's their background. Will you be able to have a relationship? Do you think you like them? I think the biggest things to do are just get a feel for whether you connect and you like them as a person. If you don't like your doctor, things are bad. For us, when Amy and I choose pediatricians, Amy's my wife, we don't need a hand holder, for instance. So like we sort of look for people who are more information business, get you out the door. Like I don't want to sit and have 20-minute conversations when a 1-minute conversation will do. Because I feel like I'm a doctor and I'm business. I want them to take care of my child and get up. That's just my personality. So usually what I do is ask, when I need to pick a new pediatrician, I ask my colleagues, like, who's the best pediatrician in the area? Like, who's the smartest? Like, who's the best? And I will say that without naming a name, our pediatrician is spectacular. I mean, she's made diagnoses that just blow me away and that actually panicked the crap out of us, because one time she saw something in my oldest son's eye that's pathognomonic for like a retinoblastoma. She saw what we call an asymmetric red reflex, and I lost my mind. And we went to the ophthalmologist, and it turned out to be not retinoblastoma, but he had just a difference in, when he was like 3, a difference in the focal depth of his eyes, and had to wear glasses while they caught up. And the ophthalmologist noted that like she'd never seen anyone make this kind of diagnosis without dilating the eyes and doing a thorough view. She was blown away that anyone could do this. That's my pediatrician. On the other hand, I trust her also sort of to make decisions. As I think I've talked about before, I'm not allowed to make any kind of medical decisions for our children anymore after a mistake that I made with a broken foot years ago. And if I've not told that story, it should be an entire episode of Healthcare Triage. And after that, I no longer make any decisions. The doctor makes all the decisions, and my wife brings that to everything. But again, now I'm getting way off subject. You should connect. You should know, is this doctor more evidence-based, or is this doctor practice more of an art? Is this doctor, like, do you think up on the current research, or are they more that they, are practicing from a wealth of experience? Do you want someone who is a parent and therefore knows tons and tons of experience about how to deal with kids? Do you want someone who has been practicing for 40 years and therefore can say, like, look, I've been doing this for 40 years and this is what I do? Or do you want someone younger who might be like really up on the current technology and able to talk about what's the latest thing coming down the pike because I just finished my education? There's no right or wrong answer. All of these are correct. It is just what works best for you. Mr. Lumpkins, on the exercise recommendations of 30 minutes a day or 150 minutes a week, are there benefits or consequences to getting the 150 minutes per week in one day rather than spreading it out over 5 to 7 days? I will wager that none of the studies compared this. That, for the most part, they were trying to give you average days, and therefore that's what we know. Therefore, I do not know if doing one day of 150 minutes per week, or 150 minutes, is the same as doing 5 days of 30 over 7 days. I would encourage people to do the spread out because my gut tells me that you're not going to get the cardiovascular benefits if you only sort of exercise your heart once a week and leave it not exercising at all for the other 6. I think you're probably better off spreading it. Now, if you want to do more than 30 minutes a day for many times a week, more power to you. Don't know if you're getting any extra benefit, but I probably, if I was talking to patients in my room, in my office, would probably say, no, I'd spread it out and try not to bunch it on one day. Which is always a good time to remember that I'm not giving you medical advice, because we on Healthcare Triage do not give medical advice. I'm not your doctor. You should talk to your healthcare professional to get actual medical advice for you. Next question. Do I have any response to the Marketing with Doctors episode, which aired on Last Week Tonight with John Oliver? If I remember correctly, this episode was like the beginning of last season, so it was a while ago, and it was focused on the different ways that pharmaceutical companies advertise to doctors. Some of it being direct-to-consumer advertising, some of it being the use of pharmaceutical representatives to go into doctors' offices, some of it being, I think, partially the ways that they even do education as marketing. I have written on this many times, and so my sort of stand on this is clear and public. Direct-to-consumer advertising, we're like one of 2 countries in the world that does it. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but that's because often it pushes again diseases that aren't necessarily diseases. It's often about pushing, broadening things. It's also about often creating awareness. But the way I always say is like there are no advertisements for steroids. Steroids just work. There's no advertisements for chemo. Because when you got cancer, you're getting chemo and no one else is getting chemo. There are no advertisements for albuterol for asthma because we just use it, we know it works. Most of the times the advertisements are when there are many drugs in the category and they're trying to push one over another, and it's often the more expensive kind, and that's when sometimes it gets into problems about, do we really need this? When the other part, which is much greater, is not the direct-to-consumer advertising, it's the use of pharma reps to go to doctors. My issue with the way that sort of they covered it on last week tonight is they used a lot of older data because there's been a lot of changes in the last few years in how pharmaceutical reps are compensated, in how pharmaceutical reps are allowed into doctors' offices, in the ways that doctors can actually accept gifts from pharma without them being reported. This is the Sunshine Act. And so in the last few years, a lot of this has changed. And so if you went 10 years back, it was sort of bad. It was bad in many, many ways. In the last few years, things have changed quite dramatically. So if I had any response, I would say it was a big issue. It remains an issue, but a lot has changed and gotten better than the ways I think perhaps it was portrayed in that episode. But again, remember, it's a comedy show. You're not supposed to get your news from last week tonight in the same way you shouldn't still get your news from The Daily Show, and you shouldn't get your news on any other sort of comedy show. They are comedy shows first, and that they're hilarious, and I love the show. Do not get me wrong, love it. And I found that episode, Marketing with Doctors, to be quite entertaining. But if you want to know, I say often, if you want to know what's sort of really going on in health policy, we hope you turn to non-comedy show outlets more than you turn to comedy shows. Andrew McCain, is there an order of flossing and brushing teeth that is demonstrably better? That is, if I floss before brushing, am I likely to have better outcomes than if I brush before flossing? I've had one dentist tell me to do it one way and another tell me to do it the opposite way. What, if anything, does the research say? I will bet that there's no research on this whatsoever. Because even then, it's when you get down to it, the research on brushing and flossing is shockingly weak as well. The research on much of dentistry is not good. Nobody really knows how often you're supposed to get those x-rays. Certainly the amount that is often pushed is way more than any research shows is necessary. The same with all of this. If you are flushing and brossing, that's not even make sense. I was about to say flushing again, which you should always flush, by the way. Always flush. If you're brushing and flossing, and you're doing both, kudos, you're already winning. It's hard enough to get everybody to floss. It's hard enough to get some people to brush. So if you're doing flossing and brushing, just be happy. You're doing it well. And don't panic or worry about the ordering so much. That seems like worrying about, the difference between organic and conventional vegetables when I'm just thrilled eating vegetables. Midnight SG. In the world of pediatric medicine, autism seems to always be on the front page. Are there any other recent studies or discoveries in children's medicine that you're excited about? Well, I don't think that they're on, autism isn't on the front page because it's their current research or excitement. It's just that it's very prevalent and everybody keeps panicking about it. But what is exciting in children's medicine? I don't know. I mean, you have to remember that most of the breakthroughs are on things that we don't hear about every day. And it's bread and butter stuff that you just don't know about. For instance, when I was in medical school, they used to train us all the time on a disease called epiglottitis, which is caused by Haemophilus influenza, and it was really drilled into you. This is an emergency because these kids need their airway protected, and if you intubate them the wrong way, they will die. And it used to cause a significant amount of huge morbidity and even mortality in kids. And I've never seen a case of epiglottitis in my entire career ever. I can't remember the last time I heard about it because the H flu vaccine, which is part of the Hib vaccine, which never gets talked about because MMR is the big one, basically eradicated it. Eradicated it. So no one sees epiglottitis. It doesn't exist. And then not long ago, it was a huge deal. Even that we used to admit all babies who had a fever in the first 2 months of life, absolutely admit them and treat them for diseases that they might have. And now more and more, we're not even having to do that because the pneumococcal vaccine and other, we're recognizing that even the strains that are around anymore, we just don't worry about those. Now still, we treat them and we watch them very carefully because you always watch babies, but that sort of knee jerk, we got to admit them all to the hospital is really going out of vogue. There have been other advances as well. I mean, we used to panic all the time that kids who got strep throat were at a significant risk of having rheumatic heart disease. That's almost like not. When was the last time you heard about someone getting rheumatic heart disease? Because, the strains that are left just don't appear to do it. We've gotten, it's like we do so well. You hear all the time about polio being eradicated all over the globe. But a lot of this stuff is just, it's bit by bit on things you don't actually hear about every day. That stuff blows me away. But of course, the stuff that gets pushed every day is the stupid supplements, multivitamins, all the other stuff that really doesn't make much of a difference. That was long-winded, but there you go. Terrytown, how was Disney? It was awesome. We were at Disney World right up until Christmas. I love Disney World. My kids had a ball. I'm not sure about my wife. I don't think Amy loves Disney as much as we do. She hates the 13 plus hour days that I make us do. She would like to relax more. But if you go at the busy times, you sort of got to go early in the morning so you can get on the rides, and you got to stay late so you can see the shows, and it gets to be long, and I'm going to have to find a new way to do this if we're going to go back again so that I can keep Amy happy while also doing it. But my kids loved it, and I loved it. And it was all Star Wars, which was awesome. And I was telling everybody that my kids had almost no interest in waiting to meet Mickey or Minnie Mouse. They stood in line for half an hour to meet Chewbacca and another half hour to meet Darth Vader, and it was awesome, and the pictures were great. They also, by the way, have updated Star Tours immediately to include stuff from The Force Awakens, which was just great. And I'm very happy that I saw The Force Awakens before I went to Star Tours, because that would have bothered me a bit. Anyway, Terrytown also asks, can you discuss your thoughts about lightsaber wounds if they were real? How would you treat a cauterized wound? Okay, well, now you're all Star Wars. So it's funny because I was reading an article recently about how the weapons in Star Wars are so poorly conceived because basically blasters and lightsabers are built to inflict the least amount of damage possible, because again, you get shot and it instantly cauterizes the wound. And if you were stormtroopers out to destroy a population, that would be a very bad way to have a weapon. You'd want a weapon that would blow them up or kill them or make sure that they die, but instead you shoot, so if they get hit here, oh look, it cauterized the wound. So anyway, they're all heat-based, laser-based, and they do stop the bleeding. However, I would imagine they cause very bad burns. And burns are very susceptible to infection without proper treatment. And in fact, people often don't die from the burns when they get really bad burns. Burns right away, it's from the shock later, it's from the overwhelming infection that occurs. You'd be shocked at how much of a phenomenal barrier your skin is, just skin, to keeping out infection. And without that barrier, you are very, very prone to infection. So, how would you treat a lightsaber wound? Well, once you've shown that you've stopped the bleeding, which again is the way you're going to die immediately, I would be very worried about infection. I would be worried about scar healing to make sure that you didn't have contractions, or that you didn't limit mobility, which would mean that you would want proper physical therapy as people recovered from their lightsaber wounds. And again, as I said before, you just want to make sure you're treating infections and making sure they're not having any fluid issues if the burns are very severe. Maybe that's why they dunked them in those Bacta tanks, because those, I would imagine, are chock full of antibiotics and they keep everything moist, and maybe that's how they do it. I don't know. Anyway, I'd imagine that the Jedi Academy or the Jedi Temple has a very knowledgeable way to treat people who have had lightsaber wounds, and they're very based on how they would treat burns. Anyway, Urkantnistali. Your names are too complicated. Is aloe vera effective for burn, sunburn relief, or faster healing? Yes, it is. So this is one of those, when people are often asking me to bust medical myths, aloe vera is always one I point to. It's no, that one actually turns out to be true. There have been randomized controlled trials of two kinds. One where they use pig skin, very popular in studies. It's very much like human skin, where they wound pigs, and then they would do randomized controlled trials for wound healing. The other way is they do it on people, where you get a bunch of wounds. Either you don't randomize people or you randomize wounds. This one will use Neosporin. This one will use nothing. This one will just cover. This one will use aloe vera. Aloe vera works very well. As good as many of the bacterial ointments that we might use. Certainly better than nothing, and better than covering, certainly much better than not covering a wound and keeping it moist. But aloe vera is effective for burn and, relief, and actually for faster healing as well. So it does work as well as many of the medical products we would use. So that's one of the natural, if you like that kind of thing, even though we did a whole episode on why you shouldn't worry about natural versus conventional medicine versus Eastern medicine or Western, whatever you want to call it. There's proven and unproven, and aloe vera falls into the proven group. It works. So if you want to use that to treat your burn, great. Go right ahead. Ben, I'm looking at my watch for time because we're almost out. Ben Beadle, should I worry a lot about what laundry soap I use for baby clothing and or about using dryer sheets or not? So you want ones that don't have a lot of perfumes and a lot of other stuff in them because baby skin is very sensitive. So you just want the simplest possible. Some of them will advertise like good for baby. And what they really mean is that they don't have a lot of the extra stuff in it. Same thing with dryer sheets. Like they're skin sensitive. So don't use anything more than you need to. So the simple soaps that don't have a lot of coloring, perfume, all the other stuff, that's what's best for baby. From Reddit, Paul Christo, any evidence to support linking hot beverages to esophageal cancer? Coffee. I don't know of any. I've not heard about this. If they do exist, I bet they're epidemiologic. I bet it's more of a correlation than any kind of causation that I know about, meaning that like people who are more prone to drink hot coffee may be prone to other things that they do that might lead them to be at higher risk of esophageal cancer. Smoking would have been a big reason. Chewing tobacco, tobacco is. A lot of people think that there's more and more evidence that HPV is linked to esophageal cancer. So there are other things that might be linked to drinking hot beverages. I don't know any causal pathway randomized controlled trials that show this at all. But if there is, then let me know. Final question. David S. The new trend is now vaping, which has become a substitute for smoking tobacco. Has there been many studies on this new product or how it affects someone's health and is it safe? We did a whole episode on this, and we've done even I know Healthcare Triage news episodes on e-cigs as well. And I get more flack every time I talk about this topic than almost anything else that I do. So now thank you. You've probably got me another week of hate mail. The e-cigarette and vaping crowd is very passionate about defending it. So this was my take home. It looks to be safer in many ways potentially than smoking cigarettes. So if they are vaping as a substitute in terms of total harm reduction, and they accomplish that, it looks like that it has a role in harm reduction. However, it does not appear you're like breathing water vapor. There does appear to be some impact on lung function and other things, often from the additives and the flavorings, more so even than the nicotine. But that, it is still shouldn't be marketed as like candy to kids, like, oh, it's not harmful and there's no danger at all and go right ahead. It is also not clear that it actually works as a means necessarily to bring people from smoking. And there's worry that it may bring some kids into smoking that may progress to cigarettes. Those are all the concerns. So my take-home message was, if for harm reduction, it does seem to be less dangerous, or there's these real potential that is less dangerous than smoking cigarettes. However, it should not be marketed as something totally harmless and, like breathing water, and everyone should just go ahead and do it. And that's our episode of Healthcare Triage Live. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for everyone who got questions in. We'll be doing this again next week. You can start getting your questions in as soon as we get the link up. As always, facebook.com/healthcaretriage. Reddit, HC Triage after the R. Buy our merch at hctmerch.com. Nice. Nailed it. Patreon.com/healthcaretriage where you can support us directly, which we always appreciate. We will be doing for the next month, we will be on target. Regular Healthcare Triage on Monday, Healthcare Triage Live on Wednesday, Healthcare Triage News on Friday. We got big funded things we're working on this year that are going to be great. Follow us the whole year long. Subscribe, do whatever, get everybody else to love us. We appreciate it. See you next week.